Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Stephen Miller absolutely snaps at these reporters for asking these ridiculous questions about these deported Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang members. Let's dive in.
Criminal record here in the U.S. according to these deportation orders, and he had no criminal record in Venezuela either. So why do you think someone like that should be sent to a maximum security
I'm sorry,
prison?
I'm confused by the question. Is it your position that a member of Tren de Aragua who is in our United States illegally should be allowed to commit crimes limitlessly until such time as that individual is incarcerated? That it should be open season on Americans? That TDAs come in, it's like ISIS coming into your country or Al Qaeda coming into your country, and that you let them stay here, catch and release, catch and release, catch and release, and then eventually, only after they've served some prison time in America, do they get sent out? Our job is to send the terrorists out before anyone else gets raped or murdered. Other questions?
I'm not making
The
case
protest
that
outside the
he's
White
a
House
terrorist,
last
sir.
night featured Palestinian flags, but also I saw Hamas flags flying outside the White House. Does this administration believe that the flying of these flags could be a national security risk outside the White House?
Well, I'll reframe the question to just say that the administration continues to take the view that any foreign nationals who are visiting our country are prohibited from supporting any designated terrorist organization, such as Hamas. Any other questions?
Is President Trump still calling for the impeachment of Judge Boasberg in this case, despite what Chief Justice Roberts said yesterday?
Of course the president stands by his comments, absolutely, as do we all, as does the entire administration. You cannot have a democracy where single individual district court judges can assume the full total powers of the commander-in-chief. Even on the Supreme Court, it takes the agreement of 5 Supreme Court justices to change a federal policy. 5. A single district court judge out of 700 cannot set policy for the entire nation, let alone on national security and public safety issues. The president has been clear that he has tremendous respect for Justice Roberts and believes it's essential the Supreme Court crack down and stop this assault on our democracy from these radical rogue judges that are usurping the powers of the presidency and laying waste to our entire constitutional system. Last question.
Can you explain more on the Democrat terrorism issue of the Teslas
Teslas
being destroyed? Can you explain more on the issue of the Teslas?
Yeah, the president strongly condemns left-wing domestic terrorism in the clearest and most forceful terms we possibly can. Yes, good
Just quickly,
question.
2 things. I think what she was trying to say was that, not arguing that there were TDA members on the plane, but there were other people. Is there going to be other evidence shown from the administration that
they're all trained Aragua. And again, let me give a concrete example of this just to illustrate the principle here. Let's say that you have a family living in a neighborhood, and next to them, they have little children. Next to them is a Tren de Aragua gang member who, as a document of the proclamation, are sent here by a hostile regime and is the most violent and ruthless criminal terrorist organization in the Western Hemisphere. So, do our counterterrorism officers arrest and remove the terrorist? Or do we say, we'll leave you there, you can rape and murder the people next to you, and then after you rape and murder them, and then only then will we remove you? We're not going to let anyone get raped or let anyone get murdered by terrorists. I got it right.
Y'all, that is the absolute state of the American mainstream media right there. Instead of asking, hey, have these justices, this judge, Judge Boasberg, who is from D.C., who is the district court judge in D.C., is this judge overstepping his bounds? Instead of asking that, they're asking, why is the Trump administration so hostile towards this judge? Then they're asking questions, well, does the Trump administration have a problem with the Supreme Court? Because there has been a little bit of beef back and forth with John Roberts. And I'll dive into that a little bit here in a moment. And then the questions are, what are the rights of these Venezuelan immigrants? When the question should be, why haven't they been deported before now? Okay? A good journalist would ask that question. See, here's the legal basis for what the Trump administration is doing. Okay? It's really simple. In 1798, there were a set of 4 laws, basically considered the Alien and Sedition laws. 2 of those laws have basically been shelved. They're no longer on the books. One of which was directly repealed just 4 years later, mainly because Thomas Jefferson wasn't too happy with the way John Adams was carrying out the law to begin with, and he pressured Congress at the time to repeal the law, and won. That's how much of a better leader Thomas Jefferson was than John Adams, but we'll let the historians argue down in the comments below. But then there's one law that is still on the books. That law has been the Alien Enemies Act, and it has been used on 3 separate occasions. Once during the War of 1812, and the other 2 times during the 2 World Wars. And in each of those cases, those were all considered completely legal because the first part of the law directly correlates to the idea of being in wartime. Now, the mainstream media has been harping on this point that, oh, this law is only supposed to be used during actual wartime. No. As a matter of fact, that's because there is a second part of the law. And that part of the law basically states that if there is a foreign national working either on behalf of a foreign government or suspected to be working on behalf of a foreign government to undermine and destroy property and sometimes even public goodwill inside the United States, well then, Buster, you don't have any rights anymore because you're not a citizen, and therefore you can be removed. At the time that this law was written, there was a huge kerfluffle going on with France, and they were sending emissaries over here to drum up support to get Americans to fight on the behalf of the French during their wars with all of the nations around them. Because France was basically still revolutionary France at the time, kept on picking fights that they couldn't win. And what did George Washington, by the way, say once he left office? Don't get involved in European wars, okay? That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 was don't form political parties. Well, we ignored that one, that's for sure. But when it comes to ignoring basic legal precedent, that is something that the ACLU has actually done in this case, okay? And before I get that, I do need to once again talk about John Roberts very briefly. There's been a little bit of a back and forth between the Trump administration and Chief Justice John Roberts because John Roberts wants to stand up for district court judges like Boasberg, even though Boasberg has likely overstepped his constitutional bounds. The Trump administration is not happy with these activist judges, and by the way, there's one of the worst kept secrets in Washington was that under the Biden administration, more than a quarter of the lifetime appointments made for the federal bench, and I'm not just talking about the Supreme Court, I'm talking about the entire judicial court system that we have at the federal level, had been filled. Over a quarter. That actually broke Trump's record during the Mitch McConnell days in the first term. So, yeah, there's a huge problem with activist judges that we have in our country. And this is what ended up happening in this case of Boasberg allowing this case to move through, even though there were still some questions still needing to be answered. And I quote, "The American Civil Liberties Union and Democracy Forward preemptively," that's a key word here, "sued Trump late Friday, saying 5 Venezuelan men held at a Texas immigration detention center were at imminent risk of removal." And I'm using those quotes quite literally. That's what the quotes are. "Under the Alien Enemies Act, Boasberg blocked their deportation, prompting an immediate Justice Department appeal." So translation, here's what's going on. So the ACLU, along with Democracy Forward, filed a complaint, a civil suit, basically saying that you shouldn't do what you're doing, even though we don't have all the facts of the case. That is quite literally suing someone because you're afraid that that person is going to slander you in some form or fashion, okay? That's not supposed to happen. But Judge Boasberg ended up doing this anyways. He ended up going through with this whole idea and going through with this charade. And it doesn't help that he also has political ties to Democrat operations back during the Steele dossier problems under the FISA lawsuits that were going on under the Biden administration when the Congress was realizing that, oh, y'all have been misusing your powers, and this is what we've been finding, and Boasberg just kind of went along with it. So he's got some skeletons in his closet, and now he is allowed a suit that might not be legal to begin with under ridiculous preconceived notions. Sorry for the stutter there. And so ultimately, this whole lawsuit might not have any leg to stand on whatsoever. So, of course, the Trump administration is going to be just the least bit irate about this whole situation. And of course, Judge Boasberg is now under the microscope. There's a chance that this dude might even have articles of impeachment filed against him. I know Lauren Boebert is considering doing so, but the House can't impeach. That's the Senate's job, but that's neither here nor there. What we're likely going to get is a major congressional committee to look into the actions of this judge and then ask the honest questions and try to get the whole truth. Meanwhile, we have an activist judge going rogue by definition, allowing a suit that's probably not legal to begin with to go forward and then tell exactly what the president can and can't do, even though the suit, again, and I cannot stress this enough, might not be legal to begin with. This is what activist judges do to the country, and this is a huge problem when the president is acting within his rights. This is a huge issue, and granted, I think that Trump would win on an appeal anyways, but the fact that this happened to begin with is a huge problem in our modern era. We might need to start looking at better solutions, and if you've got a better solution for the way our courts should work, let me know down in the comments below. This is going to be a fun one to look at, y'all. My name is Brian. I hope you enjoyed this segment here on Politibrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.